Okay, welcome to chapter 53 in the Practices book. This is all about hiring system administrators. And yes, they are different, okay? The way you recruit them is different, the way you interview them is different, and the way you retain them is different. So, they talk about the two stages of putting something together. Stage one is basically you need a list of required skills. So you probably put a team together to kind of review the list of skills, and then a team that's going to do the interviewing. And then the second stage is actually, okay, they're here, now you need to somehow persuade them to come work for you. So it's a little different. There's a saying in the human resource business. It goes like this: you're hired for your skills, and you're fired for your conduct. Let that kind of sink in for a minute. This is the way it works for everyone. They look at your skills, they go, yeah, you look like a good fit. We'll offer you that job. But if you end up being, a total butt, and everyone hates you, well then you do all sorts of outrageous things, you're not being fired because you don't have the technical skills. You're being fired for other reasons, right? Your conduct. Okay, so the job description. So what do you want them to do? Now, there's an appendix B in the book that talks about the many roles of a system administrator. You could go through that and kind of pick out things. Now, I'll caution you right up front. Civil service looks at job descriptions like a contract. It's like, here are the things you're supposed to do in your job. And, woe is you if you're working outside your job description. Shame on you. You could get in trouble, kind of a thing. That's not at all how it works in the outside world. It's supposed to be a communications tool, not a shackle that keeps people from doing things. It's supposed to be a tool where you talk about, here are the types of things I might ask you to do. In other words, you have to have the skills to be able to, skills to, migrate a Windows 2000 system over to a Windows 2019. That's the skills you need. Am I ever going to ask you to do that? Probably not. That's not the point. The point is I want you to have the skills to be able to do that, because there's thousands of other things that use those exact same skills. So I just picked one thing in the job description that shows you have those skills. It's not that one example is not what I'm going to ask you to do. Okay? Good. All right. So, things I might ask you to do, but I'm just going to have one or two examples. I'm not going to go through every single, well, we might ask you to do this, you might ask you to do that. So, whether I actually plan to use those examples is not relevant. Okay, so writing a job description as specific as possible. Don't have a generic system administrator task, unless, of course, you only got one. Well, then I guess it would be. But if you got a team of 3 or 4 and you're hiring an extra one, well, then go ahead and make it specific. Go ahead and say, well, this is the person that's going to be in charge of user accounts, or this is going to be in charge of the security settings, or whatever. And, candidates might look at a job description that's incredibly vague, where they can't even tell what it is they're going to be doing. They'll go, well, I'm not going to bother to apply for that job because it looks like it's everything. It looks like, oh my God, I'm going to be the only one there. That's an awful lot of work. Okay. So there's 2 parts to a job description. There's the responsibilities and then the skills. Responsibilities are good. You're going to be the lead such and such, and you're going to be responsible for maybe a title involved. That would be kind of cool to give them the title. You're going to be the senior this or the junior that. Some sort of an indication of what their responsibilities are. Because some people will take a job not because of the skills that meet. It's because they want to move up the corporate ladder, so to speak. And it's like, ooh, this looks like it has more responsibilities than the job I'm currently got. I'd be interested in that job, even though the skills are the same. Okay, all right. So they start talking about hiring the skills versus hiring the person. It's a pretty cool thing. They talked about, hiring the skills means I've found a perfect match. This exact skills that I need, great, we'll hire them. Hiring the person is like, this person has the potential. I mean, they're bright, they're, creative, they're likable, they've got a great imagination. They would be a perfect person to groom into, a senior system administrator job. That kind of a thing. So one is I'm hiring the skills you already have, versus I'm hiring the person who has the potential to take on those skills. So on page 982, they talk about the skill level. So skills do determine the pay. So you kind of have to be careful. Don't go crazy on the skills and say, well, I want, it has to be this certification and that certification, in combinations that make them a superhero. If so, then you're going to have to pay superhero prices for that. Just saying. Some people look at this from the other point of view. Some people look at, for example, I'm hiring for a first line, support, like a help desk. I probably want the minimal amount of skills, and I'm not willing to pay much. And so, maybe if you got a, A plus and maybe a security plus or something like that, it's like, that's good enough, that kind of a thing. So just be careful. And in the real world, the candidate's motivation, hiring the person is probably more important than the skills. Skills can be learned, okay, right? Skills can be learned. But bad behavior, if you are just some misogynist jerk that's going to cause strife among the staff, that can't be undone. It's not likely you're going to change. If you are a jerk, you're probably going to remain a jerk. If you're going to be causing problems, there's probably nothing we can do about it. Just saying. So get somebody who's got highly motivated that wants to do this, and you can give them the skills. If the best, of course, is they're talented and motivated, both, right? They got the talent and they're highly motivated. Oh, that would be perfect. That'd be the person that you want. They can do more and learn more, right? They're the type of person who says, okay, thank you. I finished that task. What else do you have? I'd really like to learn about such and such, as my next assignment. They go, oh, well, okay. That's how you're supposed to do this. And if you have a team that's already struggling, like, they're behind on a project or just, not enough, you probably need to hire somebody that's kind of reform-oriented, somebody who's got a lot of experience putting together teams and, kind of working out. You don't want to hire a junior person if you have a struggling team, right? Because they'll be going, what do you guys want me to do now? And it's like, hell, I don't know. Go have a seat and answer the phone. Okay. Okay, so recruiting on page 983. So the recruiting is slightly different. Best, of course, is with recommendations, right? I mean, we're talking about skill sets and human behavior. That's kind of hard to do. If you have somebody on your staff, a known quantity, oh, that's sweet. Because we do this a lot, right? All companies do that. Hire somebody that's part-time, and it's like, wow, this is a really hard worker. Well, next time we get a full-time position, we'll just pop them right on over. So the reality of the situation is, when it comes from a system administrator, you're most likely, your best candidates are going to be people who are already working for somebody else. Therefore, you're literally trying to steal them away from your competition. Okay, just keep that in mind. And so there's a bit of inertia, right? How much better... For example, if you have, I can provide them a little better benefits and a little better pay, they'd probably go, I'm not going to move just for that, because just inertia alone, okay? So the way it's done now, mostly, internet job placement, right? All the recruiting sites. There are people out there, are headhunters that do this for a living, that specialize in system administrators. That's where you need to go. You need to make yourself known. For example, there used to be an awful lot of face-to-face conferences, before COVID, and the recruiters would sit in the back of the room, handing out business cards to everybody. We had this one club in Austin where the recruiters would come and say, "Hey, we'd like to come to your meeting," and they said, "Great, bring pizza." So we never paid for pizza at any one of our meetings, because the recruiters would come and say, "Great, we have an advertising budget," and they bought pizza for everyone to eat and handed out business cards. So yeah, internet job searches is for little things. Headhunters are for big things. Okay. Now they talk about, make sure your HR folks aren't doing the first cut on their own. They probably lack the kind of skills that they need to be able to do that first cut. I mean, for example, if I said, in the job description, must have, Linux experience. And then the candidate says, yeah, I got plenty of experience with Red Hat. Well, would the HR people know that that was a flavor of Linux? Or would they go, well, that doesn't match. Put that in the reject pile. So some of this is going to be either teaching the HR people how to do this, or teaming with them to review the first the first round, or take it away from them and do it all yourself. Lots of choice. There's a painful truth of the keyword searching. Again, civil service uses this god-awful keyword search thing in order to see, because they most likely, because just sheer volume. I mean, if I'm advertising for a system administrator, low grade one, and they just have keywords in there. I've done this. Okay, I've done this where I put in the keywords, and the civilian personnel office at the time would call me on the phone and say, hey, look, we only got 5 candidates. You need to change these keywords. I go, oh, how about this? He goes, oh, no, now you got 30 candidates. I said, okay, how about this? And so I just kind of proposed keywords until we got down to about 15, and said, okay, that sounds good. I'll take the list of 15. You see how this works? So unless you just so happen to type in the keywords, you don't even get considered at all. The first cut takes place without you. Now, I would not want to do that, the story I just told, on a system administrator job, because it's just too dang important. Okay. Timing on page 985. So there's a brief window when somebody's going to be available, and there's a brief window when you're going to be available, and hopefully they line up, right? The position is available in June, and this contractor, his contract is up in July, and it's like, missed it. Or they, right? You're just going to have to think these things through. So it's really a balance between interviewing a lot of people, and then, or, okay, I found some pretty decent candidates, going to skip through the rest, right? Do you want to do that? Do you want to have round 1, round 2, round 3? Round 1 is just, everybody goes through it really quickly and goes, yes, yes, no, no, yes, no, no, no. And then round 2 is you actually have the people come in. And then round 3 is like, okay, now come talk to us, and let's go out to lunch and we'll talk about this and that kind of stuff. And the other thing to talk about is, because this is a life decision that they're making, they're leaving their old company and going to their new company. I mean, they have a lot of questions like, what about my vacation time? And what about this? And what about that? Things that are not really related to you and your job offer, but their current position. So give them time to think. Don't pressure them. So what do you think? Are you going to accept the job? Go, just give them time to think about it. Give them time to respond. On page 987, they start talking about team consideration. Most likely you're hiring somebody to work in a team, right? Not alone. And so are they going to be a good fit for the team? Again, we're talking about hiring the person now, not hiring the skills. So, personality clashes could happen, and they're kind of sort of difficult to determine at an interview stage. I mean, even if you're the worst possible human being on the planet, you're evil to the core, you could probably pull off being halfway normal for a half-hour interview, right? You could probably pull that off, and we would not know that you're a complete evil person. Okay? So, this is obviously not an issue if you're hiring current people, because current people, exactly, if this is a good guy or good gal kind of a thing. And they talk about, cultural and ethnic diversity. It's always a good thing. Having different points of view on a team always enriches the team. Doesn't matter what the team is. Doesn't matter what the differences are. It's always the same. And not everyone has to fit in the box. All system administrators look like this and act like this. No, that's pretty bad. Okay, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark. You guys know how this works.